welcome to episode 10 at Home with Cathy. Today we're going to look at something a little bit different. Instead of actually painting a piece of furniture or looking at a theme in a room, we're going to look at mixing colors. We've had a couple of viewers say, well, I don't own all those paints. And it's a valid point. Number one, they take up a lot of room. Number two, you're just going to be painting till your hands fall off because you're going to want to use all of those colors. You don't have to have all the colors. You start with colors that call to you. You start with colors that make your home into what you want it to be. But we're going to go back to primary here. We're going to look at the primary colors, quite literally, a blue, a red, and a yellow. And we're going to talk about mixing colors. Annie has a great mat called a mix mat. It does the thinking for you. She's used her colors and her color wheel. She's put it out here. She talks about how to make colors. She talks about a little section on complementary colors. She talks about your neutrals. And on the flip side of it are a whole lot of little things that you can practice if you wanted to learn how to hand paint details on some of your furniture. The mat is silicone, so you can put paint on it, wipe it off, and start again. In her book, and this is the book we've been following in this series, the Color Recipes for Painted Furniture, 40 Steps, she has an excellent, it's the very first section actually, section in her book on working with paint colors and how you mix them. She has her chart here, and we've talked about her chart in one of the previous episodes, but she has a wonderful description of how you make colors darker or brighter or completely different, what complements, what grays colors. Then she goes through it step by step. She does a red and shows you the reds, mixing them here to make them darker, mixing them to make pink. She does a section on greens. She does one on blues, another one on yellow, and one on grays. And it's fantastic. I found it probably one of the most interesting things to read in the book. We tend to forget that all of the colors in the world are made up of other colors. There are only 3 colors to start with. So let's play with that for a little bit. We're going to put out a little bit of yellow. And I work with squeeze bottles here just because I have a little bit more control than pouring from a can. And blue. So I'm working with Napoleonic Blue, which is one of the darkest. I'm working with Emperor's Silk, a very intense red, and English Yellow. What we're going to do is I'm going to get a cloth here. We know that when we take red and yellow and mix them together, we get orange. So I've got a piece of paper here, so we can just take our orange. Now we can make that orange darker by adding more red. Deepen it up. Or we can make it lighter by adding more yellow. I could make a coral color. Honestly, it's infinity when it comes to how many colors you can make just mixing. But with 2 colors, I've already got my more traditional orange, a deeper kind of burnt orange, or a redder orange, and I've got what could be a very pale coral color. I can do exactly the same with my blues. When I mix a blue with a yellow, what I'm trying to do here is get an even amount of blue and yellow to start with. I get green. Now this green is quite a bit of blue in it. I could tone it down with a bit more yellow. And I get a much softer sort of a leafy green, and I could keep going. I could keep adding more yellow to it, and I would get almost a lemon yellow, or I can darken it up again and get more of a blue-green. Now Annie's paint comes in two sizes. It comes in the 1 liter cans that you've seen a lot on this show. It also comes in 4-ounce cans, or 4-ounce jars, I should say, and we call those project pots. That's wonderful for color mixing. You don't always need a whole lot of color to make it. So now I'm going into my aquas. Again, just using 2 colors. Let's play with the Napoleonic blue and red. This is for all the 5-year-olds and the 5-year-olds at heart, because 5-year-olds love purple. You ask any 5-year-old what their favorite color is, and every little girl will say purple. So we've created a burgundy here. If I add a little bit more red, it's going to be a little browner. I'm getting almost sort of a Merlot, a wine color. If I add more blue, I'm going to get more of an eggplant. So when you're mixing colors for a project, you might start like this, but then you would actually measure out how much you mixed, what percentage you were doing of your red, or sorry, your blue to your red to get your purple. Then you could go a little further. You could take a red, and you could just experiment. What happens when you mix red with your green? You get almost a brown. So if you created an earthy tone. If you take your yellow and you go across the wheel and you mix that with your purple, you're going to get a gray. And what Annie's done is she has taken the 3 primary colors and she's mixed them to get all 36 of her colors. So now I've got a color, I could gray that down a little bit more. I've got almost a mushroom color. And let's do the same thing. Let's take the blue and mix it with our orange. Almost any time you mix 3 colors together, especially when you go across the color wheel, you're going to get some form of a brown or a gray. So I now have 12 colors using 3. And that's the multiplication of color mixing. It really is about that simple. Now you have to let these dry, because what happens to them when they're dry is they're going to be a little bit darker, a little bit more intense. And of course you have to remember, if you were using them in a project, are you going to put wax on them? Are you going to use a dark wax, the black wax, or a white wax? You can actually tint your wax. You could take a little bit of the red and mix it with a clear wax and come up with a wax that has a red tone to it. So you can take your wax, you could take 1 wax and make a whole lot of colors of wax as well. So what we're going to do next is we're going to show you toning of colors. You can take 2 colors, and it's like those paint samples when you're at the paint store trying to figure out what color to put on your wall. It starts with 1 intensity at the bottom or the top, and it moves up. Working with the paint is, with Annie's chalk paint, is that simple. So let's take, this is burgundy. We're going to do 1, 2, 3. We're going to do 5 shades of burgundy. And with this, I'm going to do 2, make it a little bit more intense. Old white is probably the most popular, one of the most popular colors we sell. Old white is a great color to take your dark furniture back to a modern, lighter look. We've used old white on, we've seen it on cabinets, we've seen it on chairs, we've seen it on tables, we've seen it in many, many places. It's a very popular color. It's a great blending color. So I'm going to take 1 dot of Old White. Take 2 dots here. Three here. So now I've got a 2-to-1 ratio, a 1-to-1 ratio, a 3-to-1 ratio, and sorry, 2-to-1 ratio of the Old White. I'm going to make this 3. And this, I'm trying to make my dots about the same size. I don't know if I'm doing a stellar job of that, but I'm going to take another page and we're going to show that. So we're going to take, let's just start with burgundy too. Just plain old burgundy. And plain old white. I'm going to take burgundy. That's burgundy. It's beautiful. It's like a lipstick color. It's going to dry darker, but that's solid burgundy. This is burgundy and Old White. That's 2 parts burgundy to 1 part Old White. Already you can see the pinkness coming out of the burgundy. Going down a little bit more white. And we're just going to keep doing this. You can do this with a brush. I just find it a little bit faster to do it with my finger. So now I've gone to the next stage of it, blended 1 more dot of the Old White in. And you can see how my colors are changing. I'm still using those same 2 colors, but I've just opened up the palette. And again, it would be infinity. You could work with this as a proportion, as much burgundy to white as you want, and keep changing that proportion. When you do this with white instead of Old White, it comes out a little bit brighter, a little pinker, because the Old White has just a little hint of a yellow or a cream in it, which kind of brings this down to a more of a soft rose tone. And there's my Old White. And I could keep adding. I could add more and make a very soft, almost a blush as well. So that's color mixing. We have our burgundy and our Old White, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shades, which is just the beginning of what you could do. You can take, and if you're interested, come into the store and have a look. We've done this with a lot of our paints. We've mixed them with Old White or pure white, and we've done maybe 16 different variations. You could do this with a green and Old White and do exactly the same thing. You could start with your olive and have this beautiful dark rich olive and work all the way up until you're at a sage green. So you can see how you don't have to have all of the paint. You pick the colors that call to you, that work the best with what you're doing, and you blend them. You learn how to use the color wheel. You can come up with a whole lot of colors. What Annie's done for you in creating so many colors is taken the guesswork out of it. You know when you open a can of Louis Blue, it's Louis Blue. It doesn't matter if you buy a can this year, buy a can next year, it's the same formula. When you're mixing and you're doing it yourself, you have to be very careful that you may remember to write the recipe down. You think, oh, I'll remember it's 2-to-1. You won't, and you'll never get it quite the same again. So that's color mixing, and we are going to do something very similar on these table legs. These are the table legs that go to the table that's in our coastal room. We're going to do a finish called ombre. And ombre is a blending of one color into the next. we're not actually going to do that on the camera because I have to work all at once, and you have to start as you're going, and you work your wet paints all the way down. So you have to work quite quickly. But I am going to show you what it looks like on. So this is the wicker shade we painted on one of our coastal episodes. It still needs a second coat, but it's painted in cream. This, I started with cream and I blended all the way down, blending another amount of orange, Barcelona orange, into it until I reached the base where it's all Barcelona orange. It looks like a creamsicle. It's a beautiful finish. It has a sunrise kind of look to it. And when we put the shade on, particularly when it has one more coat on it and we don't see the black through it anymore, it'll be quite beautiful. It's a process you have to do quickly. You start by measuring your piece. So this measured almost 60 inches. I broke that down into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So roughly 10 inches apart, and I actually put a little pencil line on there. So I would bring my brush down, I would paint all of my cream, and I'd make sure I had a wet edge, because I would then pour a little bit of my Barcelona orange into my cream, and I did have it all measured. I had it ready to go so that I knew I was adding more orange, and I could see by looking at it too. But I'd take that wet edge. Here I cheated a little bit because I do have these kind of funky little bits, so I didn't have to have it blend right here. I treated that as my edge. But here, my first cream and orange blends into the next cream and orange, which blends into the next cream and orange. I haven't waxed this yet, but when I wax it, it's going to be even more intense. That's what we're going to do on these chair legs. And to do that, I will measure, and I'm going to have roughly 20 inches, 18 inches here. I don't want a break here, so I'm probably going to paint this in 5 sections. I'll put a little pencil mark where I need that to be. So if this is 20 and the next leg is 20, I'm about 40 inches altogether. I'm going to break that into 5 pieces. So I'm going to mark on my piece where my 8-inch mark is. And then I'll do the same thing here. So I'm going to be right about there. So as I paint, I'm going to paint this cream, make sure it blends a little bit, do my next blending, come down here, mark my next, and so on, so that I have 5 sections. And when I paint it, of course, my color mixing is going to have to be done the same all the way around. So I'm going to have to do this 8-inch section, then this one, and so on all the way around, and then my next 8-inch section. So you want to have everything ready when you do your ombre effect, because you're going to have to work quite quickly. And I want to talk just for a second on priming. This was a dark wood piece, and I've been using old ochre as my primer coat. I find that the old ochre is a really good block for the dark. You can see there's a little bit of dark in here still where my brush strokes are. I may touch that up, but otherwise I've got a really good coverage with one coat of old ochre. And my cream, that's what I did on the lamp base too. I used old ochre as my base, and I found it covered very well. This was black. So one coat of old ochre, and then my cream covered beautifully with just the second coat all the way down. So Janet is looking for an interesting finial for this because we are missing a finial. And when you come back, these 2 pieces will be part of our completed coastal room. So now we're on to episode 11. Episode 11 is going to take us to the second of the bedrooms. It's the boho room, and I think probably next to the coastal room, maybe one of my favorites. See you then.